Welcome to the GOT Academy podcast.
Hi everybody, hello John Taggart, how are you doing?
Hi Gil, I am very well, how are you?
Oh, welcome to the podcast again, though
Thank you.
Nobody knows that it's your second time here.
Yeah,
Only we know it.
I'm excited to be here again.
We had a recording snafu the last time, but it's all for the best because now we have an even better topic.
Yeah, this conversation is going to be even better than before, new and improved. My name is John, obviously, and I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Glasgow in Film and Television Studies. So I've done a lot of critical analysis in film and TV, and I'm doing a master's in film, TV, and media studies at the moment at QUT in Brisbane, in Queensland. So I've been a little bit of a academic pop culture head for a while, but it's nice to get the chance to express it. With you.
Yeah, definitely. And you're a patron.
And I'm a patron as well, yes, of course.
Yes, so thank you for being a patron of GOT Academy, and patrons can come over the podcast if they have cool ideas and something to talk about.
And definitely should do that. They should do that.
They
Absolutely.
should. And we've had a lot of interesting patrons that talk about Harry Potter and Game of Thrones and Mindhunter and all kinds of stuff. And
Linguistics.
Linguistics, yeah, this is a great way to learn and to get to know people from all over the world with all kinds of different backgrounds and point of views. This is the best thing. This is the best thing about GOT Academy. And
It's
the
a lovely
podcast makes it
community, I
easier.
think.
Yeah, I think so too. Today we're going to talk about Game of Thrones. We're going to talk about how Game of Thrones portrays LGBTQs.
Yeah, and I would say very poorly. I was just taking some notes and I was watching some old YouTube clips of Game of Thrones, same-sex attracted people and characters just before we started recording. And when you watch them all in really close proximity, it seems to me that a lot of the representation of same-sex attracted characters trades in very worn stereotypes, and not in one or two examples, but consistently.
And this is true for the show and the books, or do you differentiate?
I differentiate very strongly. I think that's not true in the books at all. In fact, I think that the representation...
So you are saying that Dan and Dave are using tropes and cliches and did not write nuanced characters?
Shocking.
How dare you?
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
You want a good girl, but you need a bad pussy.
It is a really controversial hypothesis that Dan and Dave may have, in this one single element,
Yeah.
not quite met expectations.
Yeah. Let's isolate it from everything else. Yes.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so tropes. Let's start with the first two gay characters, Loras Tyrell
Yeah, so I think Loras
and Baratheon.
Renly.
I forgot it. Renly.
So I think it's interesting that you asked about the books, because I think a lot of the nuance that exists in the books in terms of exploring same-sex attracted characters and their existence in a medieval world, even a fantasy world, is completely lost in the transition to screen. And I think there are a few different reasons for that, which I'll come on to. But to take Loras as an example, in the books, he is not the heir to Highgarden. He has two older brothers. And although it's heavily implied that he is in a sexual relationship with Renly, that's not made explicit in the books.
Yeah, not at all.
But you can definitely glean that it is the case. But in addition to that sexual relationship, he is a very established warrior. He's quite hot-headed. And obviously the Tyrells sort of represent, as we were talking about last time, they represent France. So they represent very fertile lands and very forward-thinking fashions and a very warm climate.
Yeah, refined taste.
Absolutely. But medieval France was also quite for foreboding war machine. You know, it had a strong military, and so did the Tyrells, so does Highgarden. But in the show, because Loras is a same-sex attracted character, therefore the entire house and their military prowess seems to rest on him, and he is a weak, ineffectual, for want of a less politically correct term, like really pansy-ish stereotype.
Loras Tyrell. He's prettier than the Queen.
I don't care about pretty. He's better with a sword than any of them.
How good could he be? He's been stabbing Renly Baratheon for years and Renly ain't dead.
Particularly once it starts to go off book. So in season 1, when he is in the tournament with the Mountain, and it is very analogous with the first book, A Game of Thrones. That's great. But then the first time you really get an insight into Loras' sexuality outside of his relationship with Renly after Renly dies is when he is talking to Sansa about their upcoming marriage. And he starts talking about their wedding and how he's always dreamed of a big wedding with, you know, lots of costumes and lots of musicians and lots of tournaments and tourneys. Oh, and of course the bride. And she compliments him on the pin that he's wearing, and he says, "Oh, it's not a pin, it's a brooch." And just the way that this series has leaned into our contemporary understanding of the performativity of a current gay man who is enacting his sexuality in really effete ways that are quite disconnected from his warrior self in the books, and also our way of coding him as queer without having a same-sex attracted scene explicitly happening, even though we've already seen that. So we already know that he's gay. We know that he's a gay character, so we don't have to have like such a lazy representation of him being gay. Absolutely. And then they do the same thing later on. I think one of the worst examples of it is when he's in the dungeon and Marjorie goes to see him and she says, you know, I will get you out. They want me to rat on you, basically. They want me to turn against you, and we won't let them win. And he says, "Oh, please, just let them win. Let them do anything they want. Just make it stop." And that moment is when Marjorie decides that she's going to collude with the Sparrows instead of be in conflict with them, because she sees Loras suffering and in so much pain. And I like that the Tyrells are predominantly organized by the women. I think that's a cool and very sort of different approach, that matriarchal power structure and dynamic within their house. And I even like that it's at the expense of a man. I'm like, well, that's cool. Like, you know, you can subvert that, and you can make, you know, so they make Mace Tyrell the idiot so that Olenna can take political control of the house, even discreetly. Yeah. But to do it at the expense of a gay man when there are so few gay representation in the show, it just leans again into this idea that he is a weak, simpering fool. To make Marjorie the hero, he has to be the pansy, and that is really problematic, I think.
You're getting me annoyed. It reminds me, so in the books, the last that we know about him is he goes to Dragonstone, and you mentioned he was a hothead, and he's very severely injured, and it says that he was too eager to fight, went ahead of his army in Dragonstone, and that's why he got hurt. And that's and it's really hard to imagine anything like that happening with Loras, who's not that tough. And that I wanna go back to what you said earlier, that this gay person he lives in the equivalent of the 1400s. So gay people back then were not like gay people now, because people were different. Culture was different in many, many ways, and it's just weird to put it's very anachronistic to use our contemporary present and just force that into the past, no matter how it is, even if it's just like, I don't know, it can apply to feminism or whatever. It's Yeah, it's annoying.
100%.
And wrong also.
I could not agree more. I think there was what people don't really understand, and what the show is. And I understand, Game of Thrones is not a historical documentary, but there was no such thing as being gay. So if you, and I'm not saying that there weren't same-sex attracted people, but as a concept in our understanding of being gay as an identity, that didn't exist.
A community, like the gay community, whatever.
Exactly. And so people who engaged in extramarital relations or non-procreative sex within marriage, such as oral sex between a man and a woman, or anal sex between a man and a woman, or any sex between a man and a woman that was outside of marriage, was as sinful and frowned upon as same-sex sex, because all of it was not for the purpose of procreation. It was all sinful because it was all recreational lust. And so the idea that Loras would somehow be singled out by the Sparrows, who would just go after the gay community, and even Olenna calls him a sword swallower through and through. I'm like, no, there is no such thing as a sword swallower. He would still have married a woman, and he'd still have had children, even if he was what we today would understand as a gay man, because there's no such thing. I read this really, I'm going to read it actually. I read this really amazing thing earlier about the Sparrows, and I thought, here it is. I have a sneaking suspicion that part of what prompted Loras' arrest is lazy shorthand writing. In the books, the Sparrow movement is a rather complex populist crusade. They're motivated by the impact that the War of the Five Kings has had on the civilian population, so they flood into King's Landing and demand that the king will uphold his part of the social contract by sending men to end the banditry devastating the countryside or take up arms through the faith militant. They're also primarily focused on ending corruption within the church. If they do have a social agenda, it's tertiary and aimed at women and not gay men. That's why Marjorie gets arrested. But HBO's audience isn't familiar with a religious social movement emerging from the left rather than from the right. And so
boom.
That's exactly what I thought. So it's like, so if that same audience doesn't have context for conflicts between church and state to do with military and judicial power, then they'll make it about culture wars like abortion, evolution, and gay marriage. And I was like, that's exactly right. It's all about pandering to today's audience.
People started to hate the High Sparrow because they thought he was whatever, Hamas or whatever, a crazy U.S. pastor or whatever it is, and that wasn't the case. There was no other way to organize people under certain, like, whatever, social ideas of political ideas of change, other than religion. What else could they do? What else do you want to do? Whatever, to be liberals in 600 years ago, before anybody invented the liberalism.
That's right, and I think it was a major mixture of things. Like, yes, the Sparrows are, analogous with like Catholic Inquisitions, but first of all, they aged up Marjorie, so she slept with Tommen, so the whole her hymen, she's a cheater situation couldn't work because she wasn't a virgin. She also, they'd done away with the older heirs to Highgarden, so they had to find a way to get Marjorie arrested and bring Loras back, and then the final thing was obviously the Sparrows being part of a current liberal social agenda on screen. So, with all of that in play, I think Loras just became one-dimensional fodder for the show, and worse than that, he just became a weak, imbecilic nothing. And it's interesting you said before about him fighting, because the oldest in the books, Tyrell brother Willis, he's the one who has been crippled in youth, so he turns to books rather than swords because he can't really fight very well because he's crippled. And Olenna says he's the only one of the Tyrells who doesn't just want to beat each other with sticks. But Olenna in the show says that...
Did we fight well?
As well as could be expected.
It was never our forte. Golden roses, indeed.
The Tyrells never were much good at fighting. That's why they lost in season 7 against the Lannisters. And I was like, nope, you all fight all the time. Just because you're gay doesn't mean that you can't have military prowess. It's like she literally says the exact opposite of what Book Olenna says. And it's all because Loras is gay. So they've just made the whole house, a military failure because Loras is attracted to men.
This is like 1980s perception of being gay. This is really... This is really silly. Yeah, it's like you would have a show now on ancient Greece, and you would portray people there having same-sex, whatever attraction, as being effeminate necessarily and weak, even though that was totally different back then.
Yep. And then the other example that I have in that same vein is Yara. So in the books, Asha is straight, but in the show, because the books say that Asha has something of a swagger to her and is quite masculine in our understandings of gender norms. So she has to be a lesbian, and she has, like, the way that Yara's sexuality is represented is just as problematic as Loris's. So because she's a masculine woman, she must be attracted to women. And then there are lots of instances, for example, when she's in the brothel with Theon, and she says, "Oh, I'm going to fuck the tits off that one," and it's clearly, like a man writing a lesbian, like that is what it is. But there are ways that you can read that as well. Yara's trying to fit into the culture of the men that have raised her, and the Ironborn aggression, because that's who she is. She wants to be the leader of the Ironborn, and she's used to women being used, I guess. But also, it's putting these toxic masculinity words into the mouths of women. And then there are some other examples as well, like when she sleeps with, or she's going to sleep with Ilaria, and they come up with this horrible dialogue about entering a port or like a foreign invasion or something, and it was just yuck. I was like, anytime when same-sex attraction is represented in Game of Thrones, it is so hyper-sexualized, and it also leans right into gender stereotype tropes in every instance. I thought.
Okay, so totally agree. So a few things about that. So first of all, I thought you were being very generous when you offered a different explanation that maybe she was trying to fit in and stuff. Okay, if that was it, then show us that it's all bravado, but maybe whatever. Have her show it in her face or whatever. Hint at that. It wasn't that at all. She was just like a stereotypical male sailor, how they would portray it.
Yeah, that's right.
And another thing that when we were preparing, Noga and I, one of the final videos of the season to psychoanalyze Dan and Dave, we watched a bunch of interviews with them. And I was shocked to hear them say in one of the interviews that they know nothing about politics. They are not interested in politics. And the way that they portrayed politics, they were saying that they are annoyed with famous people speaking their mind about politics because nobody is interested in what they have to say. And I was thinking, like, do you know that the person that you are, who wrote the story that you are now turning into a TV show, he's exactly that guy. He's exactly that kind of person who speaks his mind about politics all the time, and people are interested in what he has to say. And just because you two don't have anything of value to add to a political conversation, they were just like shitting all over the very idea that a citizen of a country of the world would his or her opinions would be interested just because they're famous. So it's just annoying. It's just annoying. If they're famous, then nobody wants to hear what they have to say. This was just like so simple. I was like, this is how you look at politics, and they know nothing about politics. And this is a political story. Political, like the big whatever, capital P, not just like partisan and stuff. Like how, like the treatment of women, portrayal of women, of gays, of power structures within the society, 1%, 99%, all that. And they thought that this was a story about characters. This is how they approach it. This is a story about characters. What are the characters going to do? When they were thanking George, when they were winning their Emmys, they were saying, "Thank you, George, for inventing these characters that we are just playing around with." It's not a story about characters. This is the world. This is the entire world, a society, a bunch of societies. that is just like the most political story that you could ever come up with. It's just like through and through.
So
Even the magic is used politically. Go ahead.
I think the problem with that is that even that mindset implies...
Sorry, just to finish off my point. Sorry.
Yeah.
Finish off my point. So this is why whenever they walk into a political situation, if it's not written clearly, they just lean into the stereotypes. Women are used as whatever, as something for the male characters to develop. Gay people are used to show us something. I don't know, just like a blanket statement about gays are this, whether it's lesbians or homosexuals, because they just have. It's just like not in their nature. They know nothing about it. They don't even. They can't even fathom that there is nuance behind it. Sorry.
Yeah, and no, that's all right. Because it becomes a plot device. You know, that's the thing. So to serve the end game of Cersei blowing Marjorie up and by extension the rest of the Tyrells, then Loras's queerness had to become a plot device, which meant that as a character he had to become like a one-dimensional siphon for a weak, effeminate gay. And that's not who Loras is in the books, you know. Like, I'm sure that those people exist, but that's not who his character is or was. George R. R. Martin's own producer said that she did not like what was the term? It was the gay cartoon that they had turned Loras into. You know, his own book agent said that Loras became a gay cartoon in the show. And I think that's exactly right. And it's interesting, you know, before what you were saying about their misunderstanding about politics, because number one, if you're a celebrity and you have a platform, yes, you've got a platform, so it's like your duty to use it, because so many people don't have that. And number two, like we've got a political party in Australia called One Nation. They're very, very far right, like extreme right, and their slogan to appeal to like the working class is people before politics. And I just think that is such a bullshit slogan, because people are politics. It's all the same. Like, politics directly influence the people. So Dan and Dave, they can't separate characters from politics, because character motivation is political. Like, you fools. Oh, they're just fools. And so, yes, you're like...
And being apolitical is very, very political. It's very political. You cannot... Everything that you do is political. If you portray gay people in a certain way, that's political. Even if you ignore the complexity of same-sex attraction, and you choose and you say, nah, I don't want to get into that. I want to be political. This is very political, because you're going to the stereotypes which have been here for a long time. This is true of women and whatever. It's whatever marginalized group you talk about. It's going to be, and this is I don't want it to be too partisan, not political, whatever. This conversation you were mentioning the far right Australian party, but this is a very common right wing shtick. Left wing is politics for them, and what they do, this is just love of a country, nation, whatever. No, we're not being political. The left wing is always political. They are just you're doing the thumbs down.
Oh,
yeah,
so
this is
bad.
just a right wing shtick all the time. No, we don't want to be political. This is because the left wing is always the political ones, because we like it that Arabs are whatever lower class citizens. So hey, why do you want to bomb us out with your political talk about equal rights and against racism? Come on, chill. Let's not be political.
It's just so ironic that they can perpetuate the idea that democracy is an establishment elite. I'm like, no, like it's the opposite of that. But yes, like you're right. Any political representation, even claiming apoliticism, is political, and they have made purposeful choices with the representation of LGBTIQA+ characters from the books to the show that have been very telling. You know, like queer representation in the early 1990s, when George started writing these books, was far less, let's not say advanced, but far less progressive than it is now. and far less widespread. And yet George himself said, I looked around the world I was in, I saw that gay people exist in it, and so I wanted to put them in my book. But if I'm talking about like the weak transition from, say, for example, Asha, who isn't gay, to Yara, who is, because she doesn't fit a gender stereotype mold. But then there are also same-sex sex scenes with both Cersei and Daenerys. Cersei sleeps with one of her...
Daenerys. I don't remember. Cersei also. Right. Okay. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So in the books, after Drogo dies, Daenerys sleeps with her handmaid Irri, and it's quite.
This is a Me Too moment. She's sleeping with her slave.
Pretty much, and it's quite an uncomfortable encounter for both of them, because Daenerys knows that her handmaid is doing it because she's been told to. She's doing it out of duty. It's just a service. It's like going to get her a glass of wine, going down on her. It's what she's asked me to do, okay. And then as soon as it's done, Irri falls asleep, and Daenerys feels really like hollow and like she's sort of exploited this woman, and she's not sexually satisfied by it. In the other one, where Cersei sleeps with Taena of Mere, who is like her little bedmaid just in the court.
Yeah,
because
like confidant.
Yeah, because in season 7 of 8 of the show there was no court. The court was Qyburn and the Mountain and Cersei, but there actually was a court, obviously. And so Taena of Mere was one of her like confidants, and they sleep together. And Taena seems to get a lot out of the sexual encounter. So it's implied that Taena, even though she's married, is how we would understand a lesbian. She is very attracted to Cersei, but Cersei is doing it to try and fulfill the role of Robert, and she's trying to be the aggressor and be the man who always dominated her physically. And then she talks about, because Robert got gored by the boar, she talks about like ripping Taena of Mere literally in half through the inside, with boar tusks, like that's what she's imagining while this encounter is happening. And again, Cersei doesn't get much out of it. She refers to Taena's vagina as like a Meerish swamp or something like that. Like she's not really into it. But both of those scenes were cut from the show. So we have, and I understand, they were about relatively minor characters, but we have a character in the books who is explicitly not gay, who's had multiple male lovers, become gay on screen, and then we have our two what the show made more major characters, as opposed to side characters, and they don't have that same representation. They don't have that same complexity of their own sexualities. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, Cersei sleeps with Jaime, but to explore how people in positions of power get to experiment with sexuality because they're above normative codes, and how people on the ground actually are often have to be more hyper moral. I think that's really interesting, and that was just completely obliterated.
That is very
by the show.
And there's other was true then and it's still true now.
Well, yeah, absolutely right, and that would be a far more like appropriate analogy to draw with a contemporary parallel than
like rock stars or whatever who are trying all sorts of stuff.
Right, as opposed to, gay people are being, mass persecuted in Uganda or in Chechnya today, so let's just put that into Game of Thrones, when it doesn't really fit at all. And then there's other characters too, so there's John Connington, who, is implied to be gay and was in love with Prince Rhaegar. Like, there are a lot of characters in the books who have other characters have an awareness of their sexuality in a way that I think would have been socially known at the time, if not accepted or if not understood the way that we understand it as a sexual identity. But they are present in the books, and they're sexually active, and they're also whole rounded characters, which they just aren't in the show. The only other examples I can think of are Ilaria and Oberyn, who are very hyper sexualized, and Oberyn doesn't actually get to have any sex with men. He just has a mild flirtation with Olyvar, and then Olyvar himself is also not a rounded character either. He's just a plot siphon who is hypersexual. And it's like, if you're same-sex attracted, you seem to just fit into one of these categories of base gender normative stereotype or plot function who is hypersexualized, and that's it for the show. And I was hoping to have this conversation be more balanced. I was hoping to say, well, I didn't really like what they did with Loras, but I thought this representation was really good. But when I started writing down what I wanted to say, and when I started looking at the books to the show, I was like, wow, like I literally have nothing redeeming to say about what they did.
I don't think we should be redeeming it anyways, because it's not an isolated case. We're talking about same-sex attraction, but we could be talking about any other group, and it's the same way. It's like whatever, Brienne, tougher than whatever stone, just like this iron woman. Jamie leaves her after one night they have sex, and she's like turning into this weeping woman. Please stay. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
Horrible.
What have you done to her? This was just like totally unbelievable, and it was just like also like the hypersexualization. It's like teenagers. I thought that the first scene of the first episode of the last season, when there's this parade right going into Winterfell with Daenerys and Jon.
You should consider yourself lucky. At least your balls won't freeze off.
You take great offense at dwarf jokes, but love telling eunuch jokes.
Why is that? Because I have balls, and you don't.
Ha 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 ha. You had a year to write dialogues. This is the best that you can come up with as the opening dialogue of your last season.
And I think what the biggest irony there is that they as you said, about Brienne in particular, but also just the cheap Tyrion Varys jibes. They claim that what they care about is character, not politics, not story, not world building, character, and yet they decimate the characters to that degree, right? Like Daenerys and Tyrion in particular were just and Brienne were just, and Jaime, in fact all of them, they were just,
and Cersei at the end also she becomes like a weak woman. Please, Jaime, save me, Jaime.
Oh my god, the bit where she was like, not like this. Oh, compare that to season 2 Cersei, when she's sitting there literally ready to feed her son suicide pills to stop them from getting captured, and then to this whole like, not like this. I was like, what is that? That's not Cersei Lannister. She would have gone down swinging, man. What are you talking about? Oh, it made me sick.
Yeah, she doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, she would have. If she was defeated, it would have been fighting. Like she would have.
And also Daenerys also becoming crazy. That's also a trope of the crazy woman. And they were implying in their behind the scenes stuff that it was because Jon didn't want to sleep with her. So it's just like it's not intentional in the sense that they know what they're doing. But this is just two guys who don't have a lot of insight about the world and about life and are not very interesting. So they just go, so when they don't have anything specific to go by, they just, when they use their own stuff, it's just very, very shallow and childish.
Yeah, they just reduce the motivations to like Saved by the Bell. It's like, I'll burn down the school because my boyfriend doesn't want to have sex with me. It's like, okay, then, well, all right. But again, as you say, therefore the representation of gay people in particular, or of, there's a lot of racism problems in Game of Thrones as well. Like, brown people seem to be pretty homogenous except for Missandei and Grey Worm. The white savior thing at the end of season 3 with Misa was really uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's horrible. That wasn't cool.
But like, there's a lot of times where I think they are. I don't think they're intentionally insensitive, but very narrow in their understanding. And I think, obviously, as a gay person myself, and having a film and TV studies undergraduate degree and doing my master's in film and TV, like, I watch representative analysis with quite a critical eye, and it just left me quite cold, because I could see that it was formulaic, and it was to serve a purpose of another story's plot. So gay characters just, for people who claim to care about character so much, gay characters just got so reduced, and it was very unpleasant, particularly in the context of a show that in so many other aspects in its early seasons was so high quality, and they had it from the books to draw on. I could forgive it if George himself had written, you know, piss weak gay characters,
or if it was just a rom-com and it was something, you know, that's fine. Okay, that's this genre, but here it was something else. It's yeah.
And they had something different to adapt from. You know, like they have Cersei and Daenerys same-sex sex scenes. They have a cool character in Loras, a cool character in John Connington. There's even a trans character in the books. And I like Patchface.
Patchface is trans?
He's
the guy
like
who drowned?
Yeah, it's like or actually trans is not right. Sorry, intersex. Like there's kind of like a hint that like there could be like some sort of gender fluidity there. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to go back again and double check, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of representative possibilities that the show just shit on, and they just reduced it to Loras, Yara, Ilaria, Oliver, and Oberyn, and they were all not good. I mean, actually, of every character, we should really have seen season 7 and 8 coming, because Ilaria was the first character to get really decimated when it went from book to screen. Like Ilaria in season 5, I was like, wow, what is this person?
I have to reread it. And you know, just for people who maybe are now listening and thinking that maybe this is being overly sensitive or politically correct. So recently, I've watched. Have you watched the last roast with Caitlyn Jenner? It was
no.
Alec Baldwin roast.
No.
I maybe have to rewatch it because I watched it during the night of the Israeli elections here with a friend and my sister, as we were so tense waiting for the real-time results. So for us, it was just an exhilarating experience also to be able to laugh. But they were making so much fun of Caitlyn Jenner, and I was telling my friend, the friend that was with me, she's always bitching about the political correctness, and I was telling her, look at that. They are making fun of everything about her, but because the context and the setting, we know that they're not trying to really hurt her feelings. In this setting, in this context, she knows what she's getting into. We know what we're getting into. And in this context, there's no malicious intent. So everything is fair game in that sense. And they were saying whatever. There was horrible things. But in this setting, it's fine. Obviously, if you're a trans woman and you're going into a roast, you know that they're going to make fun of that. Otherwise, you can just stay away, and that's fine.
Sure.
So in that way, we didn't know what we were getting into with Game of Thrones, the final seasons. And it just, whatever, they jumped on us and we weren't ready. If you're watching a silly comedy or something, then it's fine. This guy is a cliche, this woman is a cliche. Okay, this is a different kind of movie that you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're right. Like, there may be people listening who think this is very, like oversensitive analysis and it was still a great show and blah, 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 which I don't necessarily disagree with. Parts of it were great. Yeah. And I haven't said anything kind particularly, but I think they received enough praise for 1,000 lifetimes. Okay. And a lot of it was pretty undeserved praise as well. But I mean, I think the problem is that words like problematic or troubling or a lot of terms that are thrown around now are used very oversensitively and very out of context. Did you see It Chapter 2?
No, I hate horror movies. I don't want.
Oh, okay. So at the start of that movie, there's a gay couple there's a gay couple who are killed in the first 5 minutes. They get gay bashed and then they get thrown off the river, and then Pennywise is like staring at them from, behind the bridge or whatever. And I read this review that was like, oh, that just shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have had to see that on screen. Like, it's just so homophobic, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, it's so important to represent gay bashing because it happens and it's real. And yes, they were side characters who didn't contribute to the story and got thrown away in a minute, but it was really graphic and visceral and necessary. So I don't think that, in like in an over politically correct sense, any representation of a gay person that is not idealized is what I'm looking for. And I think it's an important question to think, well, what are we looking for from our representation then? But what I would have hoped for from Game of Thrones was some of the wholeness that we saw, especially considering that season 7 and 8, and to a lesser degree 6, they fell off the rails because, as you say, we didn't know what we were getting in for, because they had nothing to adapt from, and so therefore they had nothing to say. But the poor representation of Yara and Loras was happening when they were still adapting from book material, and therefore there is no excuse, because it was happening inside really well-written episodes. There were really well-written episodes, like season 3 in particular, with lots of action. It cut from that scene with Loras and Sansa talking to the next scene where Cersei and Tyrion were talking about how Cersei was going to marry Loras and Tyrion was going to marry Sansa, and which one of them was going to tell her, and what it was going to mean politically, and how they were undermining the Tyrells. And it was a really well-written scene, and it was manipulative, and it was clever and insightful and character-driven. Yeah. And yet, one scene before that, the same writer had done this bullshit Loras is a queer joke thing. And I was just like, you don't have to do this. You're still adapting from books with interesting queer characters to draw from, and other aspects of the show can be and have been great. So I don't know why they... It's just blunt.
Action. Yeah, it's an action. It's not just like you forgot. It's like there is something written. I'm sure they read every episode, every chapter, whatever, 100 times. They have to make an active decision. We're going to change.
Yeah, it didn't just happen
into that. It's not an accident. They have to do something very deliberate when they have to choose what are the writing, how they adapt this or that scene.
Okay, yeah, and you've got to think, what does that mean? Like the bludgeoning you over the head with the idea that he's gay. It's like, we know that he slept with Renly and he's grieving. We know that Yara is non-gender conforming in her demeanor, so why does that have to mean she's a lesbian? Like, it's just the decisions that they make are very ham-fisted, I think.
It's also bad writing, it's just boring.
Yeah, agreed.
Just going through these routes, like, why not make it interesting? Why not change things up?
And why not show some more, like, medieval accuracy? I would really have been about understanding that, and not our world transposed into medieval times with dragons. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would have been cool. In Loras' case, so that Marjorie can be a strong woman, you have to be a weak man, and it serves even better that you're a weak man because you're gay and gay men are weak. And I was just like, this is so yuck. Like, you could have a weak gay man, but you need to have a spectrum, and they didn't do that. Or you could have, like Yara had to be a warrior gay woman because it was just so, as you said, lazy. And you're right, like The Wire, it was much more nuanced, and the books of Game of Thrones are much more nuanced, and I really feel sorry for George, to be honest.
Yeah, and let's again focus on the writing and not on the political. If you write a story about a couple, let's say, just an example, you want to make it interesting. So you have to do it fresh. If you tell this exact same story, the exact same characters that people have been talking, the exact same couple dynamics about, I don't know, a bitchy woman who tells the guy what to do or whatever, stuff like that, then it's just not interesting. So just tell a different story. We've seen this story about weak women and weak gay men and all, and whatever, aggressive gay women. Just try to tell an interesting story, because also this is a very interesting story regardless. But just as a writer, why would you approach a character and just like make it, you know what, I'm going to make it the exact same character that everybody's seen and read 1,000 times.
And they claim it to be, they claim it to be character driven, but it isn't, because your characters are so base. And it's funny, you were saying before about that line with Tyrion and Varys where it was so weak, just on the subject of the writing. There's a bit where Yara meets Daenerys, and she says, "Oh, you know, Euron is coming to offer you his hand in marriage," and Daenerys kind of jokes because she knows that Yara aspires to be queen of the Iron Islands, and she says, "Oh, I assume you're not offering your hand in marriage," and or you know, something to that effect, like you don't have to offer your hand to get my, you know, alliance or whatever. And then Yara's like, "Oh well, you know, I don't demand it, but nothing's off the table, or I'm open to anything." And I was like, that's just such a bullshit line. Like, even if you two were both same-sex attracted women, you'd still both have to marry men, and you'd still both have to have babies in that world. You know, it's just such a lazy wink to our current audience, and I just think that is so cheap. There's a lot of things. A lazy
wink to a lazy way, to a lazy current way of thinking.
Yes, that's right, and it just left a sour taste in my mouth. And the worst part is, it really, every time it happened, it really pulled me out of the world, you know, because it wasn't it wasn't congruous with how those people in that world would have been or acted or behaved or spoken, regardless of who they were sexually attracted to, which left it disappointing.
That's very, very true.
You know, it's like, oh, it's not a pin, it's a brooch. Fuck off. Like, he doesn't care about that. It's just nonsense.
Okay, John, I think this was great, even though now I'm gonna step away from this very angry and upset.
Sorry about that.
John, that was a lot of fun. Did you have fun?
A lot of fun. Thank you so much again. Even though you don't like me thanking you. Thank you.
Thank you. You're always thanking me and saying that you're sorry.
Yeah.
This is very British of you.
That's true.
I couldn't decipher your accent, but I can decipher your manners.
Yeah. After 10 years in Australia, I still thank you and sorry all the time.
So, yeah, and for no good reason. And so if you've listened up to now, make sure you follow the podcast. Either on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you caught it, and maybe share it with your friends. You want to support my work, you can go to God Academy to patreon.com/God Academy and become a patron. And if you have something cool to share with people, then join our community and let me know, and we'll set it up. So thank you, John.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And as we said offline, we'll do it again.
Look forward to it.
Yes, me too. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.